Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Tuesday, September 21st, and we had some pretty exciting price action last night. Like I promised, this was not going to be a boring week, and we're seeing that continue today, hanging in there at some critical levels, but we've got plenty to talk about. Before we dive right in, CJ, Dr. Influence, how are you guys doing today?
Finfluence.
Sorry.
I'm really good. How are you doing today, CJ?
I'm doing well. Like Monty said, it's never a boring day. So a lot of charts, a lot of data that we have to discuss and get into. But I think a lot of it is still going to hinge on the Fed meeting and kind of the outcome later in the week. But interested to hear your guys' thoughts. And without further ado, why don't we jump into it?
Yeah. And by the way, Monty was able to figure out how to fix my camera. So I'm happy about that.
Yes, you're welcome, folks. The reason you get to see Doc Finfluence's beautiful face today, that's all me. All that credit is mine. But yes, let's dive into it. We got plenty to talk about today. And Doc, I want to start with you because yesterday, I think you made some great points about what we may see from the Fed meeting tomorrow, what this whole China news is looking like. And a lot of people I've seen in our chat have been inclined to agree with you in that we may see, some positive price action tomorrow if we get positive news from the Fed. What are you seeing? Anything you've heard in the last 24 hours that may lead you to believe that we're going to see positive price action tomorrow?
Well, more or less, I guess today's action, at least so far, Monty, in the stock market, as well as the crypto market, because they moved in lockstep pretty much yesterday. Of course, crypto is more volatile than the stock market, so not surprisingly, we had an 8% move out of Bitcoin and 10 or 11% move out of various cryptos because of the sell-off. Today, we're hovering around the same sort of levels we talked about yesterday. We talked on the show about, I didn't know if we'd break as hard through 44 as we did. Is 42 going to be support? It certainly has been. And, basically, I guess, and throw that to you and CJ, but retesting that low, the flash low that we hit a week ago, that's, or 2 weeks ago, that's one of the things right after Labor Day that, I guess some in total $80 billion worth of BTC was liquidated then in total, or at least, I think it was 80. At first, they were saying it was only 3 or 4 billion, and that didn't really make any sense for a market as big as it was. And then a lot of the whale wallets, when they really examined them, a lot of those whales had sold pretty aggressively, Monty, right at the beginning of that. In other words, right as Bukele was making Bitcoin the official currency of El Salvador. And a lot of people in Brazil and everybody else was jumping on the bandwagon, and then it just fell. And as it fell, a lot of the biggest sellers, of course, were the whales. And those same whales have accumulated better than 70,000 coins, according to Sentiment, I think it is, that they've been buying up. Those same wallets that dumped have been buying it up in the 43-ish range. In other words, that's a pretty nice trade. They were dumping it just over 50, and then this is right after Labor Day, folks, and then accumulating it now. So what I'm looking for still is more or less the same as yesterday. 75-80% chance the Fed says we're not going to taper yet. We are still going to taper, but we're going to wait for more data. And the market will take that as a free pass until the November Fed meeting, or a couple days or weeks just ahead of the November Fed meeting. So I think it'll be good for stocks in the short term, good for Bitcoin in the short term, and obviously I'm still very bullish on many of the cryptos for the long term.
That's what I like to hear. CJ, I want to toss a question to you because we've been talking a lot about supply absorption, and Doc, I think you made a great point there talking about how we've had some pretty nasty wicks down over the last couple of weeks here. How do you think the market is handling this continued sell pressure that we've been seeing over the last weeks? Are you encouraged by the way supply is being absorbed, or are you a little bit on the fence with the price action we're seeing today?
No, I think you answered that question kind of for me. I think we are seeing some good supply absorption as a result of those previous wicks. It looks pretty identical to a lot of what we saw during the previous accumulation phase, and then even during last week's liquidation. So I think it is good. I think it is indicative of supply absorption and a lot of, larger players willing to take on that 42 buy level when a lot of retail was capitulating last night. So being said, let's highlight some critical levels. I also want to get into some other data to just kind of paint a picture of what happened last night. So first, why don't we start with equities and just the S&P and see where we're at? Because there's actually a lot of similarities occurring between the S&P and Bitcoin in terms of this hammer candle and then kind of an auto rally up to the next resistance level. In the S&P, we got a nice hammer candle yesterday at the close. We're seeing some bullish price action up about 0.3% right now. CCI turning up just a little bit. Also, when we go to the equity fear and greed index, this was something that Doc had actually brought up, I think a couple weeks ago, maybe even a month ago now. But we were at that similar level of 23 in terms of extreme fear 1 month ago. And, typically this has been a contrarian indicator. In other words, buy the fear, sell the greed, in other words. When looking at the crypto fear and greed index, we're not as far down, but you can still see that fear is overwhelming the market after last night's sell-off. In terms of total liquidations, we have not had as many liquidations last night and the day previously when compared to September 6th, which really brought us down to that 42K level. So interesting enough, when looking at Bitcoin, we've actually held up at some pretty interesting levels, and I will show you that here. So just going by the daily chart to start, you can see that we have a very similar hammer candle holding that 42K level, still very promising. Not really a turn up in the oscillators yet, getting a little bit of diminishing returns to the downside, but we haven't really gotten a whole lot of buy pressure. But when you look at these wicks like Monty was talking about, and you can see them all throughout our kind of consolidation phase, then all the way up into our recent last week's liquidation. I think that's indicative of whales taking the other side of that capitulation event. Also, I think the weekly chart is pretty interesting because I have highlighted here the smooth moving average, specifically the 20 period. And this has been sort of indicative of bull markets and how the trend has remained in a bull market throughout Bitcoin's lifetime. 2013, 2014, this was an area that we tested throughout kind of that correction phase before our second leg up, similar to what many are calling for to the end of the year in 2021 here. Also in 2017, we always stayed above that 20 smooth moving average until we kind of went into that bear markets. And then during the bull markets of our current phase, we really only went below it once, and that was as a result of COVID. So as of now, I think it's promising to see that although we do have 5 days and specifically 10 hours left on this weekly candle, we are getting a bounce from the 20 smooth moving average, which is pretty interesting that we're finding support at such a strong historical level in Bitcoin. So with that being said, I'll pass it to you guys.
Yeah, thank you for that, CJ. Definitely testing some critical levels there for BTC. I'm encouraged by what we're seeing there on the weekly chart as well. And I want to share the ETH chart here because we're seeing some comparable things. We reached a historically critical level and we're finding support there. We talked about this yesterday, how this level for ETH of about 2950, in my mind, is the comparably critical level to Bitcoin at about 42K. We wicked below that level, but of course, we saw that very nice supply absorption. And this chart does look very similar to, the S&P chart or the Bitcoin chart. And I think that speaks to the just current state of the market psychology and how, right now, the whole market is trading with either, a risk on attitude or a risk off attitude, depending on what they're seeing in the traditional equity markets. And I think now that we have the possibility of some positive price action later this week, I think that bodes well for both Bitcoin and ETH because they have retested critical levels, held up amidst very heavy sell pressure and fear, and are now showing signs of a potential bounce here. So I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing from both ETH and Bitcoin. So that's pretty much all I got for ETH here today.
Guys, I was looking at some of these sentiment charts on like sentiment will do all kinds of things, as you guys know, as far as metrics for various types of slices, I'll call it, of the crypto ecosystem, whether it's the ERC20 tokens, whether it's the whole $2 trillion plus market, or whether it's things like NFTs. And when I was looking at the NFTs and the prices of NFTs and how dramatically, literally, to the day, they all follow that that Bukele, the head of El Salvador, they all follow that big fall off that day that we came back from, the Monday off for Labor Day, and everybody was all bulled up. Bitcoin was over 50. In fact, over 52, I think. And then during our show, or as soon as the show ended, it just fell apart. The show, as most of you viewers know, is every day at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And right after the show, or perhaps in the final moments of the show, the sell-off started and just accelerated. It was so fast. Well, I overlaid some of the big NFT plays like Chili's and some of these others against Bitcoin. And I expected to see that they fell off harder because many of those NFTs have just, had just a horrible drop. And while that's true, it is basically the same drop percentage-wise as Bitcoin itself. I mean, they are trading, a lot of them, not all perhaps, but a lot of the biggest ones are trading pretty much lockstep. And that's something that I've not really seen too often. Usually when people get scared, the altcoins take more of a hit than Bitcoin. And, when after Bitcoin's made a run, we see altcoins, catch that second wave and they get their run, in the days after Bitcoin has had its big run. And frequently those runs are 2 and 3 times as big on a percentage basis as Bitcoin. But I overlaid Bitcoin and Chili's, and they're very, very similar patterns. Not exactly, but they're moving pretty close to lockstep right now. And through most of the last 15 days, I pulled up a 1 month. I could stretch it out to a 3 month here and see what it looks like. And there's still there are times when the NFT, of course, because of the super cycle for NFTs, really outperformed, but just in the last 2 months for sure, they have mirrored each other in their moves up and down. And I think that's worth noting here because so many people are bulled up about NFTs, and yet this is one of the areas of the markets where whether it's Chili's or Decentraland or Engine or whatever, there's a lot of the same pain as Bitcoin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. During those, downturns, they're very similar. And I think what sets them apart is during the uptrends, you kind of have multiple avenues of exposure for those NFT plays. Also, the retail traders love them. So you have, people investing in the underlying asset, also buying the NFTs outright themselves, and speculation just goes crazy. But what's also interesting, guys, is the fact that we've had all this crazy market NFT stuff happening over the last couple months. While Bitcoin's kind of been in somewhat of a rut here, it hasn't been able to make new all-time highs. I just wonder what this mania is going to look like when Bitcoin's making new all-time highs. We have that retail trader FOMO stepping in. We have Google Trends picking up on Bitcoin searches. It just doesn't feel like we're there yet. I think once we do get there towards the end of the year, we're going to see a lot of those risk-on plays like NFTs really perform tremendously well and perhaps break away from that lockstep movement with Bitcoin.
I'm also going to watch really closely, Monty, the volatility, because our 30-day Bitcoin to USD volatility is about 3.74. This is the highest it's been, higher than the early September drop. So people are a little more nervous. And, again, we've talked about it for the last 10 days. September 22nd, tomorrow, is the day when we expect something to be happening from the Fed. And, more or less, I expect, and I've already handicapped it, that I think 75, 80% chance of nothing. They just say, well, we need more data. We're going to push it off till November. But in the short term, Bitcoin volatility that, the day before that big drop, Monday, Labor Day Monday, Bitcoin volatility was at 3. And that's 3 times 16. That's not 3. It's 3 times 16. So, when you're looking at a 48 vol, it has jumped now to almost 4, which would be substantially more like 62 vol, 64 vol if we get to 4. Right now we're at 3.74. That's going to be a high number, and that should be pretty resistant. If we get up that high, I'll be surprised, but it'll only maintain that if the Fed does surprise us. If they don't surprise us, it'll come right back down into the very low 3s very quickly.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. So you're giving it an 80% chance there. CJ, what do you think happens? Is no news good news for Bitcoin?
Yeah, I like when things are quiet. To be honest with you. Yeah, I would say that as well. A lot is going to depend on what we see tomorrow, but I'm in agreement with Doc that probably 75, 80% chance. It's kind of just a show of nothing.
Yeah, and I think that'd be good for the markets. I think today we're going to see people kind of sitting on their hands and waiting because there is a lot of uncertainty right now. There is the chance they could throw a curveball in there, that 20% chance, and that could shake the markets a bit. But I'm inclined to agree with you guys that we'll probably get nothing meaningful tomorrow, and that the markets will resume ripping where they left off, and that the S&P will continue to make new all-time highs, and in turn, Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market will perform very well. So, but we'll see tomorrow. Exciting stuff.
Let me pose, if I may, one last hypothetical question for you gentlemen here. And this Evergrande scandal, or I shouldn't say scandal, but this event, it's been going on for quite a while. We've had abandoned skyscrapers in China for quite a while now, ever since 2015, when the Chinese government extended billions as a lifeline to Evergrande. If they are to intervene or to try to save the day in some respect, what do you guys think that would look like? Do you think that we would see something similar to what happened in 2015?
I was looking at other Chinese property plays, CJ and Monty, and I was pulling up a bunch of them yesterday. Most of them were down 10 or 12%. I would think that those would move even faster because most of those are more stable. They don't have anywhere near the $300 billion in debt that Evergrande has. And I mean, think about that, $300 billion in debt. How much did these guys lever that up to get to $300 billion in debt? That's massive. Doesn't matter if you say they got 10-to-1 leverage or whatever. So you're saying they're a $3 trillion property manager if it's $300 billion in debt at 10-to-1 leverage or whatever. Obviously, like you say, 2015, these guys were in trouble then. It's just been kicking the can down the road. They have, let's see, so yesterday they officially missed 2 payments to banks yesterday. Thursday, the day after tomorrow, they will decide whether or not, because they have actual payments due on their bonds, whether or not they're in total default. Whether they call it default or not, it will be default. I don't know that there's any real super appetite for this debt among G7 nations. I think most of it is probably within the country itself. So in other words, a contagion spreads if you've got counterparties that have that risk on their sheets. That would help spread contagion. I don't think there's that in any meaningful way. I don't think France or Germany or the UK, United States, Japan, the G7, I don't think they have a lot of exposure to the people that would have made these investments in there. I think a lot of them are probably sovereign wealth funds that were stupid, that made these investments. And, will China save them? They better, not for the rest of us, but for China, because China's had this circular firing squad where they've gone after gaming companies. They've gone after Macau, separate type of gaming. They've gone after education companies and so forth. Obviously, they've gone after Alibaba, Tencent, Billy, all of these big companies. And I don't think they can afford to let them go. I think it would really set them back. So I think it's cheaper for them to give them a lifeline, and that's more likely, CJ, in my opinion, than that they let them flounder and default.
And by that, they would just, essentially print money, which would then aid to the overall Bitcoin thesis of, appreciation. Also, we had some concerns, or rather questions, about Chinese individuals, perhaps Chinese whales that have been, still remaining in the country as a result of mining operations from back in the day. Perhaps they are selling their Bitcoin. The interesting thing is that we haven't seen a large inflow or a large sell pressure to Binance, which would be, the primary exchange. They've been rather constant. So unless they're going through OTC desks or something of that sort, we haven't really seen a lot of sell pressure in terms of Bitcoin coming out of China yet. So just something I thought I'd add there. But any doges of the day? I mean, we could at least highlight the assets that are performing pretty strong or resilient.
Yeah, I don't have any doges of the day today. I think that, like I said earlier, a lot of people will be sitting on their hands today waiting. So I think that waiting for confirmation tomorrow is the more disciplined play here. But like CJ pointed out, there are some assets that are performing very well amidst this market precarity here. We have CeeLo performing well. CJ touched on that yesterday. Atom is performing very well, among some others. So I don't have a doge of the day per se, but we could take a look at those assets unless you guys have anything you'd like to take a look at.
I think you already hit CeeLo, OMG Network.
Oh, yeah.
XDC. These are all up double digits. But I do think it's more prudent to wait. If you're somebody that wants to take risk, you could jump in and trade some short-dated 40 puts, the 40,000 level in Bitcoin, because you'd have some insulation from the 42,000 level. Does it hold? And you're getting paid to basically say, well, I'd be a buyer at 40,000. As long as you don't lever up on that trade, you could sell some 40,000 Bitcoin puts, which would obligate you to buy it at 40,000. But if it never breaks that and isn't through that level for the expiration that you pick, you get to keep that premium. So it's kind of like saying, well, I like it, but I like it at 38,000. Well, if you sell the 40,000 puts, in all likelihood, you'd be effectively buying it at 38,000, which is some $4,500 lower than where it is right now. So instead of just watching, you could play it that way.
Very nice. CJ, do you have any doges of the day today, my friend?
I was just going to mention and highlight CeeLo and OMG, but if you go to CoinMarketCap and you filter it by the performance in relation to Bitcoin, I think that the assets that are outperforming Bitcoin or creating like true beta are the ones to watch and potentially take a swing at if we are to get a favorable outcome in this Fed meeting tomorrow. So it's going to be interesting. But
yeah, CJ, I just have to share this because I think it fits the bill of what you were just talking about real quick, and that is AVAX. This thing, is approaching its previous all-time high that it made just a few days ago here. And I think if we do get favorable news or no news tomorrow from the Fed and Bitcoin and the crypto market in general shows strength, this thing breaking into its new all-time highs could be that, true independent beta that you're talking about, CJ. And I think that it could perform very well, even relative to a strong Bitcoin market. So watch AVAX tomorrow to see if this thing can break into its previous all-time highs and continue to rip into a strong market.
Well, don't forget, folks, even on days, when we're waiting for the Fed and or, for various levels to hold or break through. You can get paid just to sit there. You can get paid double digits for holding coins like Polkadot on the sponsor of this show, Voyager. Voyager will pay you double digits for deposited Polkadot and other coins, not just stable coins, but coins like Polkadot. And if you have the Voyager token, the VGX, they will even pay you more interest. You can find out about all of that. Why get nothing in the bank if Voyager is willing to pay you 6%, 8%, 10% or more? Go on over to Voyager and you can type in Rebel 25. And if you do that in their promo box, you get $25 in Bitcoin just for signing up. And if you want to get more from CJ and Monty during the trading day and the full 24-hour Bitcoin trading day, go to marketrebellion.com/try crypto. You can try it for $1 for your first month. $1. That's try crypto on the Market Rebellion site. Thousands of traders in there. A lot of great insights and fun charts, as well as good conversations with smart crypto traders. So it's just $1 for your first month.
Yep, and we'd love to have you. We got a lot of exciting stuff just around the corner here, so definitely head over there and check that out. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you again tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Crypto Byte. Have a great rest of your day, and take care.